So I'll start with Mr. Rajneesh Kumar. Sir, as a banker, you've seen how banking has evolved over last many decades, and we've talked about how banking can happen differently using ecosystems, using partnerships, using digital models. What are your views on the same, sir?
Right. First of all, thank you, Ruchir, for a nice presentation. But as you said, that because digital disruption is happening, the way business is being done, it is undergoing a massive transformation. And banks, they have to keep pace with the time. What is happening that particularly in the State Bank of India, I can share the experience that we have tied up with many e-commerce players, Snapdeal or Flipkart or Ola so all these people, a new financing model has come into place, which is of course about forging the partnerships, then use of technology, use of data analytics, and the organizational structure also to handle the loans has undergone a change. Because in this model, I cannot rely on the branch network to process and sanction the loans. All the loans have to be sanctioned at a centralized place, and we did not have a system because all our business was happening in the branches and controlled by the regional managers or DGMs. But when we tied up with all these names which I mentioned, so it required a different type of the structure to handle these loans, and I'm happy that we were able to put that organizational structure in place. All the loans are now sanctioned centrally, and the branch role or in our bank we have SME credit centers as well as retail assets credit processing centers. Their role is just limited to getting the documentation done. Still it is not on the digital platform, still VAT signatures are required. And if follow-up is required to be done for recovery of loan, then they play a very critical role. But going forward for handling the volumes or the small ticket size loans, I think this is the way forward. We have tried it successfully in SME, we have tried it successfully in agriculture, but the elements we have put in place, and going forward the business volume should improve. And it is not that it requires a lot of experimentation with all your credit models. Initially the losses may also be higher, but one must not panic in those circumstances. We have to provide for that when you are doing something new. Initially the results may not be very encouraging, or in terms of even delinquencies they may be higher, and if you just go into the shell on account of that, then this effort cannot succeed. So it is very important that while entering into this space, the risk framework, the risk appetite and the expectation on risk adjusted return on capital, it has to be very, very clearly defined, and it has to be given a chance. And it is again, as I say, is an investment in future. Immediate results are never visible when you are starting something new.
Thank you, Sir Rajesh Kumar. Moving on, Zareen, if I ask you a question, you see a lot of new small companies coming up. Some of them are trying to do what banks can do. Some of them are trying to, do things that are complementary. How do you look at these fintechs? Do you look at them as partners or competitors?
I would say a bit of both. I think what we are seeing in banking today is the Uberization of banking, really, where Uber is now a verb which is used to symbolize radical disruption of an industry. So if one was to look at, fintech companies, Uber is the largest taxi company owning no vehicles. Facebook, most popular media company, no content, creates no content. Alibaba, most valuable retailer, has no inventory. Airbnb, largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. So I think what we're seeing in banking is something similar. Banks have legacy systems, not easy to change, while fintech companies can start with completely, zero-based kind of technology models, and can be very disruptive. Secondly, for banks, what we find is that the KYC norms, the ALM norms, very regulated. For a fintech company which wants to create a wallet, the kind of KYC that they have to do is very different from what banks have to do. So clearly they have an edge vis-a-vis banks in the small value transactions. Having said that, I think banks can partner with fintech companies because they really help in two fronts. One is reducing the cost to serve if you partner with them, and also reaching out to a larger segment of population, which clearly helps banks, especially banks like us, which don't have a large bank branch presence. I think, I would say they are partners come competitors for us.
Srini, just moving on to you. For banks to be able to fully leverage the full potential of technology and data, banks need to make a lot of changes internally, right? Can you share some perspectives on what are the things that, banks need to do to be fully able to leverage this potential?
Yeah, I think there are two things here. One is the people aspect, and the second is the technology aspect. Let's address the second thing first. The technology aspect. I think the infrastructure you need to set up internally. I think the effort involved is quite massive and involves a lot of lead time because, as Zareen was saying, sometimes banks have disparate systems, various products in different systems. How do you get all of them together? And how do you get a single source of truth? I think trying to build that data warehouse where all the data is in a decipherable form, easy to use, and I think that's a huge effort. And I think that's the number one prerequisite you need to put in place before you try and leverage technology and data. The second itself is the people side. I think people have been used to a certain way of doing business. It's a question of now saying, how does business analytics and data change the way you do business? And I think it's only over a period of time as people experience the value of the data and how exactly it sort of helps in decision making and how exactly it sort of helps in improving efficiencies, whether in terms of cost or in terms of capital. I think these, over a period of time, people realize, and it's important to start early, and as Mr. Rajneesh Kumar said, start in small pockets, grow it, and people need to start believing in it. So both are extremely important. Just having the infrastructure without the people not believing in the technology is not going to work, and having people believing in technology without infrastructure is also not going to work. So I think both these two need to be addressed and are essential prerequisites for leveraging technology and data for monitoring credit.
Thanks, Srini. Vikrant, if I move on to you, I think there was a discussion on technology, right? You're the best person here to talk about technology. You would have seen the evolution of banking technology over a long time. What are some of the areas that you think banks have done well in terms of adopting technology, and what are some things that they can do even better going forward?
So fundamentally, we are a growth economy. Everybody in India, if we have worked last about 2 decades with first priority being growth, second being cost and operational efficiency, and third being risk containment, regulatory compliance, etc. In the order of priority when it began to automate stuff. Okay, by virtue of the being a growth economy, we have started with automating for scale. So we did core banking, we did CRM, we did loan origination systems, and so on and so forth, and all of line of business applications, procurement, HRMS, finance, and so on. So we've actually grown with by automating the backend, standardizing the backend for scale. What is pending, and rightly so, voices coming from the front, and what Zareen was touching upon, is actually innovating at the front and integrating with the ecosystem. So I think that's the piece which is yet a little pending in that sense. So customer experience will come seamless when product-led organizations, which is lending separate, credit card separate, core banking separate, loan origination separate, etc., become a seamless, harmonized experience at the front. So innovating at the front, which is an omni-channel piece from a technology point of view, is yet to get that kind of a scale. The second is integration. Integration is no more a kind of choice nowadays. Like Zareen was mentioning that we can partner with fintech company. How do you partner at a technology level? So it is emerging into a fact that banks will need to do almost like an APIification. SBI, Rajneesh mentioned that they partnered with Flipkart to do a loan on the e-commerce site. So the venues of lending will completely change and will become more and more digital. And therefore, integration is no more a question of choice of being done siloed system in-house, but even the outside stakeholders. So innovation and integration is a piece that is pending. And therefore, the architecture of the future is no more applications to scale. That will keep coming. As we get into more and more businesses, applications to scale will keep coming. But the whole central piece of banking having a technology platform in place, whether integration, data analytics, digital, omni-channel. So after application, this whole piece of a platform, a set of technology platform capability. And the third piece being able to network inside and network outside, almost like an APIification of the banking system. So that's the pending piece.
Thank you, Vikrant. Ajay, you represent something slightly different in the panel. I think a lot of us have heard about GIF, but we don't fully understand, what is it that it can offer to banks in terms of enabling the kind of change and the kind of opportunities that banks are talking about. If you can throw some light on it.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. There are two elements that I wanted to cover. First is that GIFT is a platform which can be used by various banks for doing businesses that they are not able to do today in India. Some of the overseas transactions which they could do, that can be done outside of those countries, very much in India. And there are various enabling regulations that help various banks to do these transactions. And these sort of transactions can be in many ways in terms of external commercial borrowings or buyer's credit or organizing loans for joint ventures and other companies. So having said that, let me come to how this is related to the subject that is being discussed today. I think a lot of it is talked about in terms of knowing the customer, having a whole lot of data, both technology, processes, etc. So GIFT is a perfect example of a platform where the ecosystem is being generated. A couple of banks have chosen to house their businesses there, both because of a smart infrastructure as well as smart technology, and probably the only out of the three, for example, tier 4 data centers, we host one of them with us, which is linked to the largest, submarine cable capacity in the world. But more importantly, all of this that was being discussed earlier by various panel members, whether it's the front end or whether it's the customer side of it, I think it requires tremendous amount of support at the back end. So what we are creating is a platform where all of these things can be supported, both from a technology perspective as well as from a people perspective. People perspective, because that should be a place where you want to live and work, etc. I mean, today, the moment you talk about, let's say, Hyderabad or Bangalore or some of these places, immediately the IT sort of a thing comes back to your mind. But GIFT is one such place where a lot of banking elements are falling in place, both in terms of people, technology, and processes. So that's how I think we can enable the system to challenge, the kind of way in fact, the market is sort of evolving today in terms of either platform, in terms of processes, or even in terms of technology. So we have all of these elements ingrained into what we are doing.
Thank you. Moving on, Satish, if I can come to you, if we look at what's happened over the last 10, 15 years, I think credit bureaus have come a long way in India. We have a significantly higher coverage, especially the data-rich customers on retail side, are something that banks can now use, your database quite effectively. But there are two, areas that are still not fully covered, under the credit bureaus, which is the not-haves on the retail side, the people still who don't have a good credit history, and the MSME. Any thoughts, reactions, or what can be done going forward on these areas?
Sure. Thanks, Ruchi. And as I answer that question, I just want to bring in context the presentation that you made to give a context around, especially on the retail side, how banks are actually using our, whether they have existing credit or not. And I think that question keeps coming up, and that's kind of central to how I look at big data. And we are a company which has big data, information of about 220 million consumers, 60 million microfinance borrowers, 10 million companies, but we are still on the path to become a big data company. We have big data, turning that into big insights is a whole different matter altogether. But it's important to kind of put some numbers into context. So, which you spoke about gold loans, that being a huge driver of growth. And the amounts are the right way to look at it. Obviously, it impacts all the banks, but there are about 60 million new gold loans against gold given every quarter in India. A huge number if you actually start looking at on a per day basis, right? And the reason that actually happens, yes, there is a demand, there's a latent demand. You can talk through why that actually happened. But the important point there also is process. The consumers like to go that route when they have gold because they understand the process much simpler than they're actually going for a unsecured personal loan or a line of credit. It might take 30 days to get a line of credit. It'll take 30 seconds or 30 minutes to get a loan against gold. And that's powerful when they believe that they can get the asset back. Second piece they also mentioned is when you start looking at underwriting SMEs, the big worry is, as a credit bureau, do you have credit information on those people? A lot of people might be taking credit for the first time. So what do you do about people who don't have access to credit? Now that problem is encountered today in retail all the time. So for a loan against for a two-wheeler, 80% of the time, just because of the product itself, somebody's taking a loan for the first time. Now I remember talking to a bank, it's about 6 years ago, when they were talking about credit information, the same question came up. Which said that, why should I use you 80% of the time? I won't have anything, you're not going to give me back anything. So the answer to that question, and he actually answered it himself, was he doesn't know which 80 out of the 100. He doesn't know which ones have credit information or not. So it's important to start using for all of them. Second piece is, of the 20, if he's able to find one that he might not have given the loan to if he knew about the credit information of that individual, about the score of an individual, or the credit history of the individual, then it's worth the time and effort to change the process. If you could find one that he could have given a loan to that he didn't earlier because of his policy that didn't include credit information, that becomes even more powerful. Right? So every time you start looking at credit information, I think the mental barrier that comes from a small business standpoint is also, A, does it cover everything? B, well, when you underwrite a small business, I have to look at 9 other things. Which is true. It's not just the individual that matters, not just the company's credit that matters. They take loans from households, their accounts payable, and I've had conversations with many on this panel around how do we digitize a lot of that stuff, and I think that's important. But big data can be a big distraction too. So one of the things that I kind of think about a lot, and it's a quote that I heard recently around big data and understanding how to solve the problems, because it's a complicated business underwriting a small business when there is so much asymmetry of information. And a lot of the data cannot be trusted. Right? So we know that fintech companies are doing it. We know they're a lot more nimble. They don't have the challenges that a large bank would actually have. But there's a quote that kind of, I think, is good in terms of context, which is actually a prayer. It's a serenity prayer, which says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So what this means is, when you're actually looking at, even from a business standpoint or banking, there are a lot of stuff that we will never be able to change in the near term around small business underwriting, because the data, the technology, our processes, our legacy, our thinking. But there are probably 2 or 3 things that we can change, whether it's about everything the panel spoke about, how you use analytics, how you use data, how you use technology. But all of that couched in a very simple aspect of what you're going to simplify from a process standpoint. Because when 60 lakh people go and get a home loan every quarter, half of them have access to other credit. Half of them actually have other types of loans. Half of the 60 lakhs are taking the gold loan for the second time. They're telling you something about credit, but also about process. When a big number, not as much as that, but probably half that number, goes to take finances for a cell phone, for a TV, when they have access to credit, they have credit cards. They do that because the process is simpler and the NPAs that Ruchi spoke about are low. That means they're telling you something about process. I think it's important that we identify the process we can change, along with any partners from technology or a data standpoint, to be able to at least solve 10 or 20% of the problem that exists on the SME lending. I think that's where we'd like to partner. I believe the transformation is going to happen there. The digitization is a big catch-all phrase. Inside that, this actually comes in so that at least we exhibit the courage to change the things that we can and wisdom to tell the difference between things we can and we can't.
Thanks, Satish. Moving on to a different subject, we've spoken a lot about the SME retail side, but, a large part of bank lending is still corporate, right? And banks, have seen a very bad corporate cycle in terms of NPAs over the last many years now. So Abhishek, from a rating agency's perspective, what do you think are the lessons that we've learned from the last cycle?
Right. So here I'll just take a step back and echo, I think, what the governor said earlier, that repeating the past mistake new age monitoring might not be a rocket science. There are few things which are low hanging. I think if you look at the way the loan more closely while lending and figuring out whether the debt repayment is happening from business cash flows or non-operational, keeping a better track of the forex impact for a company. Again, here IT or data could play a very big role. Looking at things like receivables accounting and whether the haircuts involved are realistic or not. And finally, when it comes to enforcing, using covenants as a tool to negotiate terms better. I think the point here is many times the penal fee charged, and those are maybe not deterrent enough. We have in other geographies where they have to report all the covenants breach as part of the regulatory disclosures. We still are a way away from there. So I think once we address some of these, at least where large corporate stress is concerned, some of them can be dealt with more effectively.
Thanks, Abhishek. Zareen, you have handled a lot of corporate loans yourself. Any kind of addition to what Abhishek spoke about?
Yeah, I think I would like to supplement what Abhishek said. I think while we're using analytics in a big way on the retail side as a bank, I think banks are not using the same kind of analytics for corporate side. First thing, for example, simple things like bank statements. If you have 30 banks in the consortium, are we using, just technology to figure out what's happening in the bank? Is there circular transactions happening in the corporate side? Similarly, we have MCA site, which is now digitized. It's very easy to use technology to figure out whether the money is moving from the promoters, from the corporate to the promoters investment company, etc. There are many, many ways we can use technology to figure out what's happening. I don't think banks have done it. Now banks are focusing on how to customize technology to get certain things, sort of have the early warning signs. Similarly, GST coming, we'll have all the data for banks, to figure out whether the turnover is genuine, for example. Similarly, customs side, excise duty records, sales tax, many, many records are now digitized. SARSA is working on various things. So the idea is that the banking community should come together and actually focus on how do we use the government records or the government databases to figure out whether indeed, the finances of the company are true representation of what they state. Also on things like stock audit or receivables audit, I think banks have been traditionally using CA firms. I think, in fact, I've been talking to banks like SBI that I think as banking fraternity, we should use industry experts because CA clearly can't figure out the stock. They go by records, but sometimes the stock is not there. So I think banks really need to sharpen the way they've been doing monitoring, and technology can be a big enabler. Thanks.
Thank you, Zareen. Mr. Rajesh Kumar, again a topic, something that you've kind of dealt with a lot at State Bank. Both in terms of, using data analytics on the corporate side to catch fraud, but also on an ongoing monitoring basis to identify early stress. What can banks do differently going forward?
What is that as the loan amount increases, the intensity of relationship has to increase. Use of technology for small value loans and handling the values is much more effective. That is one. You can have data about the corporates, you can have the same, but the major problem comes in capturing the cash flows. And if you look at it in the past history, there may be a slight diversion from the topic, but banks have no handle over the cash flows. And when we were particularly in the multiple banking arrangement and borrowers taking cover of that, they have to route pro rata cash flows to every bank, and no bank was responsible and didn't know what is happening. So as the scale of finance go up, the intensity of relationship, it has to go up. Technology for, even now the technology is available, that all the bank account statements, it is not humanly possible for any relationship manager or credit analyst to scrutinize all the accounts and then figure out. But today the technology is available where through the technology you can get all the exceptions and then analyze. And in terms of what Zareen was mentioning, that in terms of the data or information which is available, it is humongous. But ultimately in credit, human intervention cannot be eliminated and done away with. And if there is too much of information, then filtering that information and using that information judiciously and to draw the right conclusions, that itself requires a lot of human intelligence. So I don't foresee in future that particularly when it comes to the corporate credit, you can do away with human intelligence despite available of so much data, whether it is structured or unstructured. And the basic fundamental shift which seems to be happening, we all know what are the C's of credit, but three are very important, and one is the credit worthiness, and second is cash flows, and third is your collateral. So the third one should become less and less important. But the data which is available and the information which is available through whatever is sitting within the banks and whatever is sitting outside the banks, using that data, determining the consumer behavior and estimating the cash flows accurately and having a handle on the cash flows. So that is the change which is happening. And again, like all the vendor financing or dealer financing or supply chain financing, which is happening through the electronic platforms. What it essentially does, it captures the cash flows with the lender. And that is the biggest comfort which is available to the lender and not the collateral. So there is a less reliance on the collateral and more reliance on capability to capture the cash flows and recover your dues in time.
Thank you, Sir Rajesh Kumar. Srini, there is a lot of focus that banks have put on digital technology adoption for retail customers. But this discussion that we're just having on the corporate side, for the banks to be able to invest on fraud prevention, on understanding the corporate behavior, it's also important that corporate customers, SME customers, start using the digital channels. That banks have better and richer data from the corporate side. What has been your experience of the corporate SME side using the digital channels as much as the retail customers?
Yeah, I think it's still a lot more nascent than possibly the retail side. I think whether it's SMEs or corporates, I think their use of digital channels in terms of transacting has been a bit slower. You could argue it based on some of the regulations in terms of documentation and stuff like that. So whether it's trade or whether it is FX, I think sometimes the documentation aspects related to it prevent corporates from doing it a lot more digital. But I think all of us have invested a lot in technology in terms of trying to make sure these products are offered through applications, through apps, or through portals through which electronically corporates can transact. And as long as that data is captured electronically, I think the ability to mine that data to sort of understand corporate behavior becomes a lot easier. So I think it is still early stages, but I think the investment is on. But clearly, I think the benefits, I think if you look at the entire narrative till now, I think from looking at balance sheets and understanding capital structure, almost everyone talks of understanding just cash flows right now. So I think the pendulum is swinging from one direction to the one end to the other. But ultimately, as Mr. Kumar was saying, there's going to be a balance because capital structure is equally important. And understanding the cash flows is also going to be extremely critical. So the banks have a lot to do together in terms of making sure we have an infrastructure. I think the biggest game-changing thing which has happened as far as banks are concerned, which the RBI has put in place, is PRILC. In terms of understanding what the data of a corporate is and a single source of truth, I think that's been a huge benefit as far as banks are concerned. And clearly in terms of the delinquency status, SMA1, SMA0, SMA2, I think all these have been big steps forward. I think the next leap is going to be in terms of collating the cash flows and making sure that the banks across the various accounts understand how the cash flows are moving. And as the governor said today morning, the capital structure is important. I think very critical in terms of financing long term. But as you get into more operating aspects related to a company, whether it's working capital or otherwise, I think the cash flows become a lot more critical. So we need to have both the mechanisms in place in terms of trying to make sure that we get a right handle on the credit. And going digital in much larger way than where we are today, I think is going to be an equally important aspect of that.
Thanks, Srini. Vikrant, you spoke about the evolution of the whole banking technology, and what's happening right now. Now, can you give us a flavor of what else can we expect going forward? There's a talk of, artificial intelligence coming in, robotics coming in. Are these just buzzwords, or are these, are there some things that will fundamentally change the way, banks can look at back-end operations, automate a lot of, routine and mundane activities? Can we expect something real in India for the next 3-5 years?
Sure. In fact, I was extremely delighted to see Mr. Mundra speaking about distributed ledger, and Governor Rajan spoke about blockchain not being a sheer toy or an experiment, but things like smarter contracts being a possibility. So from a technology perspective, I'm pretty pleased to be on a panel where 3 of the co-panelists are customers in completely different areas. For example, SBI runs our HRMS system, but SBI's Buddy, which is a completely new digital banking program, happens to run on technology. What they're doing on the digital side of the loan is completely different on standardized backend. So under the hood of what is likely to come on, under the hood of hyperconnectivity, real-time analytics, and this digital ecosystem that we've been talking, the newer areas of artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchains are pieces of technology which will find right usage and right applications in the times to come. And since we are on a topic of credit, what is credit so far as a product? If you notice, it's been a pull product. It's been a pull product. People come to seek credit, whether it's corporates or individuals, come to seek credit for a need. Technology today has an ability to change this product to be a push product, and it will be consumed as an API. So you are on an e-commerce site that you happen to take that EMI as a loan, as a piece of credit. And you are on, for example, we run one of the largest B2B network called Ariba, which is a buyer-supplier network. Invoices flow on that network, and somebody is talking about supply chain financing. And if funders leg was available on that network, this would be a digital manifestation of a credit, which is an SME credit. Satish was talking about surrogate means to score people. For example, credit scores which are not really available. Can the trade book or the merchant's particular business be a surrogate mean for the bank to establish that this merchant is about 5 lakh rupees a month merchant versus a 50,000 rupees a month merchant, and therefore what should be the... So, and on the monitoring side, technological capability has already leapfrogged in terms of what is likely to be default, what is therefore can be a potential NPA. It's less about what technology today can do. Like India has leapfrogged on payment side, if you notice UPI. On this side as well, on credit and monitoring, we clearly have an ability to change the product dimension of what has so far been a pull product to a completely push product to be consumed on various forums, so whether it is consumer or a B2B forum. And some of people like our organization, I mean, for example, we 20 years we're celebrating 20 years of SAP in India, and we launched. This is a second country we have launched something called a live business. Okay, it's a business for MSMEs. It is actually an automation tools for MSMEs. It's got a little bit of an ERP and an e-commerce site, and ability to do and manage his own business. And imagine that data where our merchants go live on that piece of layer. Is that not the means of establishing his trade book? The execution can be cash, which is okay, because we are going to change slow there from a cash economy to a completely digital economy. But surrogate means of being able to credit and also establish monitoring our capability, which is likely to come. It will gain scale in the next 2 to 3 years.
Abhishek, if I come to you next, we can't talk about using data models. What we see around us is there's a very large difference in the kind of models that are being used. So there are banks, all kinds of banks. They are looking at the data-rich customers, people sitting in the large cities. They have a lot of transaction data, trade data. There are NBFCs who are able to lend to customers who banks are sometimes not able to lend to. And now there are fintech companies coming up. They're coming up with various different kinds of data models. So what is your perspective of how will this evolve going forward?
Definitely a very interesting question. I mean, if you see over last 10 years, banks put together would have added maybe around 80 million customers. If we are talking about less than 5 lakh borrowers. Last 5 years, MFIs and SFBs put together would have added 30 million. So that's incrementally, that's the kind of reach they're getting into. What we have is a host of, I think we have two ends of the spectrum. On one side, you have the private sector and maybe the large public sector banks looking at the well-banked customers, doing real-time analytics, looking at improving the cross-sell ratios. On the other hand, and which is a faster growing spectrum, you have a lot of these companies who are still creating data. I mean, they are starting from local ecosystem, using that information to create credit benchmarks and slowly expanding more contiguously. These are very small NBFCs, some of them have even got SFB licenses. But the way they are moving now is, before they attain scale, they are getting those benchmarks and they are moving from geography to geography. I think the next stage in evolution is a marriage between these two. I think as they get a bit of more scale, they build an analytics platform to really scrub these data, like say for example use credit bureau scores more rigorously, which would give them a bit of more scalability to expand beyond their own forte or own local. Where we see public sector banks are right now in middle of these two extremes, and I think they are looking to get more digital.
Thanks Abhishek. Satish, coming to you, you spoke about your company having big data, not yet big data capabilities. The challenge is a lot of banks also have the same problem. Most of them actually have big data. Many of them are struggling to build the capabilities that are required to actually mine big data. So two questions. One is, are there entities like yourselves that can help bank, do the analytics in a manner that can help the whole industry, right? And from your own experience, any advice that you can give the bankers here? What does it take to actually build this capability in house?
Sure. I think $1 million question in some ways. How do you build a capability when you're trying to first amass a lot of the data together? But I want to kind of put a caveat. I know it was mentioned here as well. I think data and technology does not cannot replace people. Technology doesn't give insights, people do. Right? And it's always been that way. And as the ticket sizes get larger, that means that the complexity becomes a lot larger, where you need institutional knowledge a whole lot more than technology can actually do. All the technology can do is make that probably process a little easier, probably good reason to do it. But there's a whole lot knowledge between the years that I think is very important to be able to distill if you want to, but I think that the human element is important. To your question in terms of how people go towards making sense out of big data, I think the definition of analytics is changing as well over the last, I think, 5 to 10 years in the Indian space. It's become, the word analytics, I tend not to use that as a professional name at the end of the day, because it almost sounds like manufacturing. Rarely do you ask somebody saying, what do you do? And they say, I work in manufacturing. They work in a business. So there are bankers analytics becomes the way that you use or do banking. So what that actually means is I think there are a lot of skill sets available in a place like India from a technology standpoint. People who are able to analyze a lot of data, crunch a lot of data, but it's about delivering that in a meaningful fashion. So let's say we're talking about be able to analyze cash flows, availability of banking information is there, digitized balance sheets, credibility is there. So can you create a solution that can be consumed by an underwriter for a small ticket commercial loan in an easy manner? I think that's the problem to look to solve. You can create a team of 100, 150 smart analysts. They might not simplify the process, they might complicate the process even more. What is very critical is how do you marry technology to be able to deliver these things real time. I think a lot of the conversation here, great ideas that came in, that we know it works in retail, we know we've seen it even on the SME side, that some banks are successful, is that they're able to do all these things in terms of making better risk controls, have a lot of data analytics in place, but don't remove the human element and actually reduce the time for a consumer in the process and how they acquire, how they come on board. Right? So you want to make it such that the consumer feels comfortable rather than gets burdened by now having to give 15 other pieces of information. I think the key really is to be able to change this data into solutions. And the way to do this is to be able to marry technology and data in such a way that you still get a lot of comfort from a risk control standpoint, but it doesn't change the process. If anything, it doesn't complicate the process, but simplifies the process from a customer standpoint.
Thanks, Satish. And Ajay, you spoke about how banks can kind of leverage the gift infrastructure that is being built. Are there some new lines of business that open up for banks as they kind of start leveraging this infrastructure?
So all the discussion that happened here in terms of various engagement with fintech and others stuff. So as I said, a lot of ecosystem is getting created, and the pieces and portion of banking businesses that can be kind of housed there. But one of the key focus areas that we're also leveraging is this whole MSME story. How we can house some of these sides of it. So I think that capability exists there. We are sharpening it further, and there are special incubation platforms that are available there, through which we are grooming some of these, and also providing some kind of a lead to funders, bankers, and others in terms of how to engage with them and how to take this forward.